G'day citizens, welcome to Inforunners. I'm Execute, joined today by Old Man Hurston Agrid, and Dawnstealer is joining us today.
Hey Dawnstealer, how are you going?
Hi guys, how you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. So,
I usually say I'm alive.
yes, barely.
It's preferable to the alternative.
How are you going? Because you sidestepped that question. How are you going? You say, oh, how are you guys going?
Doing well. So a little rainy out here in Seattle, but other than that, good.
Yeah. So me and Dawnstealer were talking the other day, and kind of an episode kind of popped out from what we were talking about. I actually was going through one of his videos with the speculation stuff he was going through, and then we started talking about the Reliant, and basically we were talking about a whole bunch of different things and like how it could be fixed. And so that's what this episode's going to be today, is just kind of what came out from what me and Dawnstealer were talking about, and then we've kind of pulled Agrid in on it, and just looking at the obvious flaws of this ship. I think we can all agree straight off the bat, though, it's a fantastic looking ship.
Mm.
I don't think it's the looks. The looks not the problem, is it, boys? So
no, it's definitely the gameplay to how it works in the game versus how it looks. But yeah, looks are great.
Yeah,
and I can remember one of the complaints that people had about the ship was the price of it, considering it was a starter ship. And the big ace in a hole that was always said was it was a two-person ship. And it is a two-person ship, and certainly as you go on to different levels and as the gameplay and the ability to use remote turrets comes in, that second person becomes really valuable in terms of using those turrets as well. But for a long time it was just a person sitting there twiddling their thumbs.
One of the nice features of it going vertical like that too is you could pick up a stranger in the back of the ship, go vertical, and they could not get into the bridge, which is kind of an unintentional nice thing about that.
Yeah. Well, now there's guns though, and grenades. They'll just chuck a grenade in there and kill you or whatever. But yeah, back then
there's a door. It closes.
Yeah. So one of the other positives of this I was saying to you guys before is when it goes in its horizontal, and you'll notice that the engine's face down. That's clearly tailored to some kind of VTOL and flying wings. So in air, it'll have that aerodynamics. So that's something we haven't seen as well that you'll obviously get as well. But that's, I think, where the positives start to end. So if I flick it over the browser here. When you start to look at the statistics, this is really where it all starts to fall apart. And again, we're just going to look at the core one today, but obviously there's no SCU on the other variants because they use that internalized space. But because they are so bespoke, you kind of can't compare it to other ships. So this is the one we're going to use as a comparison. And it's also the base variant. So by removing the variants in a way, it just allows us to line it with other ships. So you'll see the Agrid. Can you point out it for me? Because it'll be your left. Yep. No, up, straight up. No, other hand.
Oh, sorry, that one.
Yeah, SCU. 6 SCU up there. And this is the main problem with this ship, is it just does not line up with the other ships around its price point. So if you look at the next closest would probably be the Avenger. And the Avenger, as you can see there, if Agrid points again, it is 8 SCU. He's learning. He's getting there.
Hang on. I'll just line it there.
Yeah.
If you just line it up between our two fingers,
Yeah. And then
go to a point where our fingers point.
Yeah. And then the most egregious one is actually the 315p. Yes, I know it's not. It's a variant of the 300i, but it's exactly the same price point. All right. Is 12 SCU, which you can see also where F Agrid was deployed.
And notably, I think it also makes sense that the 315, since the rework is now the newest of those three ships too. Could make a difference.
Yeah. So again, this the Avenger is $5 less, but even at $5 less, and yes, you are getting one less person. But as Dawnstealer said, you're paying a lot for that extra person, and the only thing they provide currently is they can control the gun turret. So, and until recently, they only had the one gun. They added the second one to fix that. And honestly, I think it's still not quite enough. So the problem essentially becomes in combat. It is very big and very easy to hit. So the first thing I'd probably add there is that it probably might have some other flight characteristics when they do a lot of the Cyan flight stuff. Zion. You would have heard that if you're watching Piss Poor Pete.
Zion.
Zion. That's his girlfriend, everyone, by the way. Zion. It's like Diane, but Zion.
And if you don't like the Australian pronunciation, suck it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and when we've looked at this in the past, one of the fixes we always thought was, or suggested was, give it more cargo because those wings are so empty. Actually fill them up, or give it extra fuel, or make those wings usable and give it advantages. But that raises other problems because one second you do that, you start to push it into the next category of ship. And
starts to hit that freelancer size, which is kind of the problem right now. It has the cross section of the freelancer, but the functionality of
a starter
almost
ship.
a true starter. Yeah.
So
an Aurora.
I think that's the other problem is the price point they're at is it's above other starters, right? So it is it was the first advanced starter, but I think the only thing that made it an advanced starter, if you now look back having hindsight, is that it can have 2 people, and that is just not enough. Because theoretically, you could put a second person in a cutter right now, and they could just be lying in the bed. Now, yes, they're not firing any of the guns, but you could quite happily carry them in there. And I know there's other things like life support and stuff like that. So obviously, the other part of this that we're not seeing is the components to keep that second person alive. So I will, all things equal and benefit of the doubt and all that.
I also remember the Core. The Core also doesn't have the it doesn't have a toilet or a bed.
Yeah.
The other versions do. The Core does not.
Yep. So again, the components are one of the major costs when it comes to ships, as we know, as John Crew said in the past. So that's all I was going to say. But so the fixes are basically twofold. It's either draw back the gameplay to fit the 3D, increase the gameplay to fit the 3D assets, or somehow shrink the ship. But we'll go through that in a bit. The other one that Algrid brought up that I thought would be kind of cool to go through was the Mirai versus Misk thing. Now, we know they looked at the ship back when they brought Mirai up, and they decided against it. Now, Algrid, I'll let you kind of talk on this for a bit, and then...
Yeah, well, when you look at the original idea, Misk are the company that made the agreement with the Zion to leverage their tech in exchange for, they're doing a trade deal. You'll see Hull Seas used in Xi'an space a lot. And the Freelance was the first ship that we saw that was using Xi'an tech in it. This was the next ship that was supposed to be really heavily using Xi'an tech. And we saw that in the vertical flight. We saw it in the engine nacelle at the back. And when CIG decided to build Mirai as an offshoot from Misk, the idea was that Mirai was taking all of that Xi'an tech and really pushing it to the limit. And it really does make sense for this ship to have been pulled into Mirai. Just because it's so much taking on that flavour and everything else. Now, you made the point, X, that the reason it didn't is because of the Sen and the Tanner.
Yeah. Oh, no, the Sen.
No, the Sen and the...
Mako. Yeah.
The Mako. Because that's the news van and the science one, whereas Mirai tend to, at the moment, just do racing and combat.
Yeah.
And I think that... I kind of think that might be why, because I can't see any other reason why this ship that is so Xi'an-centric isn't pulled into that house when the Razor, it seems more like a normal ship but is only racing, got pulled into Mirai. So,
well, I kind of sit here now after you've kind of said that, Agrid, and I kind of think about it, and I go, well, what they should do is made it so where it all started was with the Tanner, and they pull the Tanner out into Mirai and make it so it looks different to the other ones, but so it's somewhere between Mirai and like it was the realization that they need to make another division or whatever, and that's where I reckon they should do. They should pull the Tanner in a certain way that it puts it between Mirai and Misk and have it as an outlier. I reckon that would be how I would do it. And then Dawnstealer, you also said it would be interesting to have. You remember what you said?
I don't remember that specific one. Are you talking about?
You said
Eraser. Yeah. Yeah, having a racer in there would make a lot of sense. Well, and also, I mean, kind of like you were both saying, of all the human ships that we've gotten, including the Mirai ones, no ship in the game is more Xi'an than the Reliant.
Yeah. And also there is actually a racing model, isn't there, Argrid, from memory, in the hangar? There's a, what is it called? The Catito or something like that they call it.
I think it's a yellow or a red, isn't it? I can't remember.
White, black, and yellow is the one I remember. But there's the little flare models they used to put in the hangar. There's one of those as a racing variant of this. Yet we don't actually have a racing variant of the ship. So how does that work? So obviously it'd be really cool to use the Tanner as the ship that it is pulled between Mirai and Misk, and you could also differentiate them enough that maybe the Tanner and the racing variant do have different looking abilities. Now we're going to get into the kind of fix that me and Dawnstealer kind of came up with in a minute, but also I also want to look at the gameplay fixes, and I think that's why me and Dawnstealer went the other way, and we kind of went, it's probably easier to fix the 3D model because, as we said, you then have to move everything else around. So where they've sold it at kind of fits where it is, but ironically at 6 SCU of cargo, that is more it's right near the cutter. It's just above the cutter. It's just above the Pisces. Right. So the price point is correct, right, at 6 SCU, but it doesn't sit with the Avenger, and the Avenger is 65. So at the moment, there is no reason for me to take this over the Avenger, other than I can have one extra person, and I don't think that's enough for all the other drawbacks.
It's a great touring ship, but that's about it. That's about the only thing it has right now. Is you can take someone who's never played the game before, sit in that extra seat, and look at the pretty scenery, and that's about it.
Yeah, and if you go the other way, where you pull it up to the game, to the size of the gameplay, you're looking at comparing it to, as we were talking earlier, the Nomad and the best the A, and the cargo capacity of those things just leaves this for dead. And
it still has the cross section of a freelancer.
I even looking at it now, like let's even try and bring it up to the 315p, like to get this from 6 to 12. You would literally need to have 3 boxes in each wing. And that is a fix you and I talked about for a long time, Margaret. But that also means they've got a 3D model everything back into the ship. So it is actually a lot of work.
That would exacerbate the problem with its cross section, because then the wings would be an even bigger target for people to hit. Or you could up the size of the cargo bay, and same problem.
Yeah. So one of the ones we did, I don't actually have the picture anymore, but one of the ones we did talk about doing was, if you actually look at just off to the right there, if you can point off to the right for the Dawnstealer, the back, the cargo section of the other way. Yeah, that's one. You can see in the middle section there, that's where the cargo goes, but you could technically just make that longer and it would still work. And it would just be a unique thing for the core. But again, you've got to make it probably half as long again to get another 6 SCU in the back there. So it does throw off that silhouette. And it actually, as Dawnstealer correctly said, it exacerbates that problem and makes the silhouette even bigger. We're trying to make the silhouette smaller because the problem with this ship is it's just so damn large, right? And that's kind of where me and Dawnstealer went for what we think is the ultimate fix, Algrid. So we're going to go through that and show you.
Just picking up that size issue, we were talking earlier about, back in the old Arena Commander, if you were racing with this ship, it was so big it almost didn't fit through the wing, the race circles.
It was very difficult to do so. So what kind of started it was this one. We actually had this image, and you can actually see the Mustang and the Roar there for reference. And what we did was, this is called a technique called blocking out. So we essentially just took off that much of each wing on either side, and we kind of drew back in. This is because I had to delete them, but they're the little wings that you can actually see. I don't have the image up, but the little wings, and it actually exacerbates them and makes them look better and more pronounced. And I said at the time, and I still think this is the case, Dawnstealer, can you just move your fat head off to one side for a second so I can see? No, the other. Either way. Yeah, but that looks like a gladiator, believe it or not. See what I mean? And obviously it reduces that silhouette quite drastically. You don't have to hold back like this. It looks like you're in a roller coaster, like. But you get my point, right? in just shrinking those wings, it solved all the problems. You can still have it at 6 SCU, and now it somehow sits between the Avenger and the Cutter, and I think that's where it needs to be. And at $5 more to get the extra player, and all of a sudden that's your compromise. You're losing 2 SCU to have a person, and I think that makes it fairer. And I would love to be able to get an Avenger and bring it in here at scale. But I reckon you'd find it's probably on par, wouldn't you boys think? That maybe
pretty close. Well,
Yeah.
And another little advantage of these little winglets here is if you up the size of them and had it transform when it goes into horizontal mode or whatever, then it kind of matches the animation styling of the other Mirais, like the Fury actually transforms and everything. And you just look all GN ships.
And you look at that there, those engines on that sizing really do tie in. It really does tie it more in with, I think, Mirai and the Furies than any other ship in this lineup.
It ironically does look a little bit Fury-ish from above, except it doesn't obviously have the TIE Fighter Interceptor panels.
They don't stick out in front,
But yeah, I just think, like, I'm the more I see this, the more I'm liking it. And Dawnstealer went further, and he actually took one of the images and he took their concept. Will you tell people what you did here, Dawnstealer?
Basically, I just took the old one and just kind of did some art magic of it. So basically just kind of chopped in the wings, kind of like X was saying earlier, just sort of did a block in, redid the background, chopped in the wings, cut them down a little bit, just to kind of see what it looked like, added in an extra pair of guns, and then sort of saw what it would look like both vertically and horizontally.
Yeah, so
just shrink those cross sections a little bit.
Yeah, so just to give you guys a thought, but this solves a lot of problems because they don't have to redo all the gameplay problems. And the other part of it is obviously the cost. Because if you added more cargo to it, the cost would either go up or... You see what I mean? Like, so this is the only fix that I've thought of, and I think you guys are in agreement with me, that basically doesn't create more problems. It solves more than it creates. But also, there's no reason you kind of can't keep the old version, and that goes into the racing one, because the racing one, the size... Well, again, Agrid, you've also stated the size does matter in the racing one, so now I'm starting to think...
Then you could start looking at maybe upscaling the cargo and stuff like that, like giving a longer box or whatever for...
Well, actually, that was the other one you and I talked about too. Not just making the box longer, but also making it, like, round.
A cylinder, just kind of drawing it out.
Yeah, because one of the things we talked about was Ahsoka Tano's ship. The guy that designed this, and I think he did the Mustang as well, he went on to work on Star Wars, and he actually ended up making Ahsoka Tano's ship. And when he made this one, he said this is the ship he always wanted to make, but he's clearly taken this one and then made Ahsoka Tano's ship. And in Ahsoka Tano's, so where you've kind of, I don't have something that, but it's essentially a rectangle from straight on. Ahsoka Tano is a cross section, so it like the cross rotates. But if you went one step further and essentially made that round or half a semicircle, because you want it flat for when it lands on the ground, it gives you more space, so you could put an extra 6 SCU in the rounded section somehow.
Or even go external boxes, since NISC is already the group that does that. I just thought that.
Yeah, so
then you could stack a few.
Yeah, well, again, that could be the compromise. You are risking some of your cargo to put it on the outside. So we've looked at... That's probably another easier way to go, but then you still got to model the panels onto it and stuff like that. So as soon as you go into the modeling, like, the other advantage of this is, because if you know how a lot of ships are modeled, they're flipped. So really, they've only got to model one wing and flip it to the other side. And you'll probably find most of the tech, like, you can even see it there in the concept image if Dawnstealer points up on his... Where it'd be directly, you can see, like, it's got the same texture pattern on both wings, essentially, is what I'm trying to point out. But there and over there. Yeah. So a lot of it is done with triggering. It's the same thing with these ships. They only model half the ship and then they flip it.
And then you mirror it.
Yeah. It's
unless it's a Corsair.
Yeah. Well, even the Corsair, there would be parts of it that are mirrored as well. Like the two wings on the outside would probably be independent, and the other one. But The turrets.
The engine blocks are the same.
Yeah.
And another advantage is they're gonna have to rework the ship anyway, because I don't think the components are accessible in the Reliance.
Yep.
So they're gonna have to rework it. So it's much easier just to cut the wings in than redo the entire ship.
Yeah, and it fixes the whole silhouette problem. Agrid, I put this to you. Do you still think that you could leave it big and have those flight characteristics for racing? The only race that I can think of that it really matters on is the
Arena Commander circles would be a big one. I think you could probably take this through.
Couldn't you just make the circles bigger?
You could, but I think you could. I think that this ship, if it was an endurance racer, if it was a long distance racer, could work quite well in Crux Cup.
Yep.
But I don't think it makes it in terms of speed or that aspect. I'm not sure.
Segue.
Sorry?
I was saying that's actually a good segue to the other idea. That this shape would dominate maneuverability rather than speed.
Yeah.
But then I'm not sure where it goes for the short races. One of the things I was thinking when you were talking about those little winglets at the back was you change the shape of those winglets and you give them kind of the curved wings.
Kind of like what they did on the cutter with the spoilers and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you turn it into a racing variant of that. And I think the smaller one just looks... I've got to admit, the smaller one just looks...
Yeah, it's really grown on me and Dawnstealer the more time we spent looking at it. Well, not to put words on your mouth, Dawnstealer, but yeah, speak for yourself. But
no, I absolutely feel the opposite. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I like it.
And but it looks more like a fighter too.
To me,
it looks a little more aggressive.
Yeah, way more aggressive.
I still think it looks so much more Mirai. It is the most unmisc ship.
Yeah,
because it's so Mirai.
But also,
and those engines just always did it.
And not having such the wing thing, you could even go back to the I wish I had an image up of it, but the do you remember the Lost in Space ship with the really big glass globe at the start? And how the ship actually rotated around that. They could actually have that in some of the ships, but not others. So, for example, maybe you use it in the racing variant because it adds to maneuverability, and you use it in the combat variant, but you don't use it in the Sen and you don't use it in the Mako because it's not required. Stuff like that. So maybe they get extra thrusters, but then the Mako on that gets something else. So something again that differentiates the Mirai to the MISC. And that's
you
where
give 4 engines.
Exactly.
As opposed to 2. So
you lose
would have 2 big engines.
Yeah.
And it has a little
that's that cross section you were talking about, like with the
right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, the other thing they could do is by bringing this change to bring the Reliant down better with the starter ships is expand the current model to go up to the next level. So you actually have the small variant of a Reliant and the Reliant Plus, which is the bigger variant. So you can even go back further.
Well, leaning into that, the Mirai versus MISC was what if it was there was 2 people in the company designing the ship, and I'm talking lore here, and they had a split. And so one guy went one way and it broke off and made Mirai, and then one guy went the other way. And so the Mirai variants are the shortened wing variants, right? And the core keep the core and the Mako, and the Sen, they keep the bigger wings or something like that. Or maybe the core's the middle ground between the two. Or something like that. I don't know. But again, some law person and that could work it out. But you get my point, right? Like I just really love the idea of the split in the company and having one ship that's like had 2 designers work on it, and then they had a fight and it kind of like split and they went different directions, and it shows why Mirai kind of pulled away from MISC. And I just
and I mean it wouldn't even necessarily need to have a fight. I mean, they're introducing GN tech, so maybe just 2 different engineers took it 2 different ways. And so
almost like a snub nose revolver or a sawn-off shotgun type version is what I'm thinking of in this. Yeah,
you just take a view of it like Origin did with the 85X and the 350 and the M50.
Yeah,
the idea was they were both being designed in Origin in lore as the racers, and the M51 out, and the 85X ended up being relegated to the side, and then they went, we need a snub ship for our 890. Let's resurrect our 85X. And so
Yeah.
You know?
Option 3 is this is the Mark II, and you keep the Mark I Reliant with its big wings. So this is after Mirai broke off, and now they're building it this way.
Look, let's not get them crazy bad ideas like all the other Mark IIs, but yes, I agree with you.
I want my jalopy, though.
Yeah. So, what would you like to hear from people in the comments below, Dawnstealer?
Just what do you think of the smaller idea? What do you think of the Reliance balance versus the other ships being that of the starter plus size being the most maneuverable? So it wouldn't have the most cargo. It wouldn't be the combat like the Avenger Titan. It would be somewhere in between, but much more maneuverable, both in atmosphere and in space is kind of the thought that we were going with.
Yeah. Agrid, yourself? And actually, I think the other thing I should say to you, Agrid, is what do you think of mine and Dawnstealer's fix? We didn't ever ask you that, so yeah.
No, well, I think that the smaller silhouette actually works with a lot of things we've said. It answers the problem, because I think when the suggestions we've made in the past of putting more cargo in still didn't raise it up to the standard of ships in the size bracket it currently is.
It's a weird fix to lower it rather than raise it, type of thing. Yeah.
And when you start when you look at it in terms of it's sitting in the middle of this kind of nexus between the starter ships and the larger ships, and you've either got to push it one way or the other because it's not really fitting comfortably in. And I think bringing it down makes more sense. It puts it into where I think CIG originally had the envisage of it being. It was supposed to be a starter ship that had the ace in the hole. It can take 2 people.
Well, in a weird way.
Since then we've had the Cutter, which can kind of take 2, but we've also had the Pisces that can definitely take 2 because it didn't got the jump seat in the back. So it really is now, the closest ship to it in terms of what it can do is a Pisces, because it can take 2 people and it's got the cargo, and yet it just doesn't.
I think
doesn't. So bring it down to that makes more sense.
So what my kind of answer to this is essentially you're making an advanced starter into a starter. And again, if you have the Mirai and you have the MISC, you could show that split that we talked about, or I talked about, but also you could have one as the advanced starter and one as the starter, and that would solve the MISC needs a starter, advanced starter problem. It essentially shows the split in the company. I just think that'd be really cool lore-wise. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think what I would ask in the comments is if you do have another fix that we haven't thought of, just remember you got to keep the price. Price is the real weird one with this, because it's the only game that, because the ships are sold, it does have the factor in the fixing of things, not the design, but because it's been sold at a thing, you then have to deal with that problem. So it's a problem you got to deal with. You've obviously got to look at the other ships in the area to bounce it off. Is there anything else there I'm missing, guys?
Those are the big ones. Balance the size,
is another
the
one.
game loop.
And the nice thing I do think about this is in terms of a core, because we don't have the gameplay for the Sen, we don't have the gameplay for the Mako. So for this and the Tanner, reducing the size of the wings doesn't impact, I don't think, on the gameplay of either of those 2 ships. You're not reducing the cargo capacity, you're not reducing the firepower, you're not reducing.
Probably help.
So you're not.
Probably helps.
So you're not
if anything.
So you're not losing anything, and if anything, you're gaining. And I think that's the bonus of that. And so you're not going to peeve off or cheese off people from who've already got the ship. You're not going to be making them pay more. And so I think in that way it's a win-win. You make it more accessible or desirable for people to own, but it doesn't cheese off those who already own it.
All right, Dawnstealer, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Pretty much just YouTube these days. Don't do much streaming on Twitch, but just Dawnstealer at YouTube, you'll find me. Just do a search for Dawnstealer. I think I'm the only one out there. Names myself after a dinosaur.
I think it's pretty unique. I don't think I've seen anywhere else. All right, with that then, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and thank you to everyone that went the extra mile on Patreon at the end credits at the end of the video. He's been Dawnstealer.
He has.
He's been Algrid, that can't point in the right direction to save his life.
And he's been Execute.
He's been Algrid.
This is why we can't have. This is why we can't have nice things. This is terrible.
This is why you can't keep moving us around.
See,